Welcome back to the Budding Author Podcast with me, your host, Simon Ward. Today, we have a very interesting discussion with Angel Wilson. Hi, Angel. How you doing?
Hi, I'm pretty good. How you doing?
I'm pretty good too. We know you've had some challenges. The twisted, enchanted world, as far as your stories are concerned, um,
Oh.
how did that come about? Where's your mind with that?
So with the Twisted Enchanted World, I came up with it because I've been through like the crazinesses of life between the great stuff, like being able to talk to somebody who had done Star Wars and Star Trek. It was really cool. We did a interview with him before, and
Is
we've
that
been
was that
able.
on the Writers' Circle? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, believe it or not, we met on the writer circle, and then we did a podcast with him. It was actually really cool. And he is he's got like an amazing resume and stuff, and I've been able to explore a lot of different states, and there's been like some amazing people I've met along the way, along the journey. And we've done the writer circle, which was a group that supported artists and writers and all that stuff, and that's been incredible. And then like the dark stuff, it brings that. I always believe that the twisted part is that like there's sometimes in life where you meet people where you go, wow, I can't believe this is real. And it just makes life just that much more interesting.
But I think we were talking just before we came on air.
Mm,
Sometimes when we have sort of challenges in our life, writing can be a great escape for us, both for readers and for writers. It's an escape from a troubled world sometimes.
absolutely. I found with my writing, like it helped so much. When I first got on Twitter, I felt like I was at a very dark place in my life, and I just really it felt like you're consumed by darkness, and there wasn't really much place to go, and trying to communicate, learning how to communicate with people was hard for me, because even though I can be a social butterfly, sometimes there's social awkwardness that kind of makes it like that wall. So what I
Yeah.
learned was that through a lot of emotions I was bottling up, I used it in my writing, to express all of that I've been bottling up. And what I learned was that, like, putting that emotions into your writing, I think it really speaks out to people who are going through similar emotions. And even
Yeah.
though they may not grasp the same situation or be able to fully relate, they have their own ways of relating to things. And so, like, it was wonderful to hear how much people were able to relate and feel the emotions in my writing, because I always had felt like I was alone, so it was nice to be able to connect with people as much as it did. I think it's a great coping skill.
Yeah. I think
Mhm.
the you've done very well with Twitter. I think 40,000 posts on Twitter,
Yeah,
just short of 30,000 followers. You're very much a Twitter success, aren't you?
yeah, definitely. It started out with writing, and I honestly, it was amazing. I had somebody who told me that there were like XYZ way of being a writer, and she sent me this like big thing of like, you do XYZ, and this is like the steps you can take to become successful. And at the time, I was like, I can't do any of them. I felt so bad. I was like, there is no way I'm going to fit in this box. Like half of these things, I am not going to be able to do it. She's like, be very professional. Like, don't post things that are like XYZ. And I thought to myself, I was like, I'm doomed. And I I realized I hit a place where I realized that I was trying so hard to be something that I wasn't. And
Yeah.
um I was struggling really hard. I had like barely hit like maybe 100, and I was like, "Yay!" And I realized I had had a moment, and I told Twitter to f off, and I just felt so bad that night. I just got so angry, and at that point, it was like almost like a turning point. I realized I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna be myself. I'm gonna tell my crazy stories. I'm gonna tell people like all this stupid stuff that I decided to do. Just like finally be myself, and like even writing. Like I was like, I'm not gonna worry about being stuck as a horror writer. If I don't want to be a horror writer, I don't have to be. I can go ahead and do sci-fi. I can go ahead and do romance. Just throw it up in the air and be myself. And realist, like honestly, it was the start of finally being able to find my place. And I found so many people who were connecting, and I was so excited. And when I think when I hit 10,000 when I started the writer circle, and I was like, I absolutely, don't get me wrong, I love messages and stuff, but hearing people's voices and hearing people's stories, they had as crazy stories as I did. So we would have great conversations like, if a zombie was out in the desert, obviously it's hot. Are they going to be able to decay faster, which means you'll survive quicker? Or are you going to end up doomed because they're resilient? You know, we had goofy conversations where most writers are like, wait, this is a writers group. This should be really professional. But I wanted to do something outside the box where writers could be able to laugh and joke around and not have to have that seriousness, to kind of break away from the stereotypes that we have
Yeah.
to hold that expectation.
Within the writers' circle, do you sort of review each other's work like a writing group? Yeah.
Absolutely. We had so many people read their stuff. We actually had somebody, I was really super proud of them during the pandemic, was a lot of where we really picked up, and we had somebody who wrote a poem and he had shared it in our group. And he's like, I don't know, I'm not really confident, like this is, I'm not the greatest poet, and like we're like, no, this stuff is like the bomb, like dude, you did great. And we were like so excited for him, and he submitted it to the United Nations, and he actually got to read it at like this big conference thing. And he was like, if I had never read it to you guys and got the confirmation, I would have never had the like confidence to submit this anywhere. And I told him,
Yeah,
I was like, dude, like you got this.
I think that
Yeah.
the writing circle idea and speaking to each other and reading it out to each other, I think is a good idea. I was part of a writing group, and I ran a writing group also, where we're sort of reviewing sort of 10K submissions, in a rotation basis each month.
Yeah.
But that was good. But I think, do you get the problem with the writers' circle where people don't want to say, "Oh, I don't like that," and then
Yeah.
that's the problem, because for me the whole point of a writers' group, I entitled the group the Shark Tank because I wanted people to show their teeth, as it were. But but you do find that sort of people don't want to upset the other ones, particularly if they know that their writing is going to be reviewed the following week.
Right.
Um, so is that better when they're speaking to each other, or is it better written?
We had a lot of times I tell people like if they want to send it to me to like physically read it. I actually put the captions on, and I suggest that all the time too. I'm like, if you want to be able to read, like read it, like captions is your best friend on those spaces. But we do have people who are like, I don't know how to tell this person that this is not to my standard. And I'm like, I completely understand it, but what we do is, instead of like being very blunt, what we do to work around it is we make suggestions. So we'll be like, look, you know, like this is what you did, and there are parts that we absolutely love. But maybe like with this aspect of things, maybe what you can take into consideration is maybe going about it this way. Or hey, look, we had an idea. Maybe this is something that could happen. So that way they're not too upset and they can really take some thought. And we've
Yeah,
had
I think
people who came back and fixed it.
the classic is good, bad, good, isn't it? So what you liked, what you didn't like, and then what you liked at the end, sort of thing.
Yeah.
What I found with our writing group, there was some very good writing, but I like fast paced writing, and I sort of write sort of like action filled and sort of plenty of things going on. Like when people get into over describing things in paragraphs of detail, it just switches me off. And
Yeah.
I can remember reading through this one submission. It was a 10,000 word submission, but sort of 3,000 words into it, nothing had happened, and it was like I was pulling my
Oh.
hair out. And how can I tell them politely that this is you need to have things happening? That's But I mean, I fall, I think sometimes the other way, where perhaps I don't put enough exposition in, enough description in. So that's a bit of a balance, isn't it? And
It definitely is. I think there's a good balance between the two. It's tough. It's tough too because sometimes it really can make or break a story, you know?
yeah, you're mainly horrors then you're writing before.
Absolutely. I loved it. I think like the one that I got the most love for so far, people have been bugging me about finishing it. Was I just kind of I had this movie that I absolutely loved. It's called Rubber and it's about a serial killer car tire and I was like that's freaking awesome. It was like the worst movie. And like if don't go in there thinking like it's good. Like it's one of those like the mannequin heads. You could see
Yeah.
it clearly flying across the thing. And I was like, "Oh my god. I love this." I was like, this is so bad. It's awesome. So I started a story about a serial killer Amazon box. And it sounds crazy, but like I was surprised I got as much love for it as I did. But people are like, this is a great concept. It was basically like general concept was that this guy gets this box and he tries to open it, it's not working and all that. And the box ends up in very inconvenient places and
Yeah.
people end up losing their life over it. But every time the cops come to investigate, they find this box with his name on it. So they think it's a calling card, but it's the box that's actually murdering people.
Oh, that's nasty. That's nasty,
Right.
but good, in a good way. In a good way, nasty.
Absolutely.
Um, as far as exposure and engagement,
Yeah.
um, where do you get most of your sales from?
Most of my sales, it comes from honestly, a lot of it is like one on ones. Like I talk to people, so many people online. I can't tell you how many. Like honestly, I lose a lot of. So I'll talk to people and like I'll be able to get on. Like I've gone through like Twitters and I've gone through conventions. I actually was a panelist at the Evansville, which is our local convention, and I tell people all the time that is like the best way to get your foot in the door. It sounds
Yeah.
really dorky, and I had a friend who told me about it. He was like, "Angel, you gotta go to conventions." I was like, "I don't know. I don't dress up. I don't dress up like that." He's like, "If you give it just a try." And I learned that like if you give samples and stuff, and you really do that one on one with people, um, it does amazing for sales, but also you get to meet connections that you didn't like the person that I met that did the Star Wars and Star Trek. I met him at a convention, and that's the way that I was able to get my foot in the door to interview him for the podcast.
That
Um,
was like a writers' convention, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of a comic book convention. It was
I
really
was like Comic Con.
Yeah, it was like a local one, and I actually got to meet a bunch of writers there too, which was amazing. I bought a bunch of books from them, and I was like, I definitely plan to leave reviews. I think that's one of the hardest things for a lot of authors is getting that reviews in to be
Yeah.
able to help boost the books.
Yeah, I think my first novel, Finding Love in 2045, has got 16 reviews, and it's sort of I just want to sort of up the
Yeah,
reviews, but it's difficult. Obviously, not everybody that reads the book is going to post a review.
High
Um,
with 16 is actually really good though.
it, and I think what I like is the fact that they're all good reviews. So the
That's always
people
a
that
great
didn't
feeling
like
too,
it,
isn't
the people that perhaps didn't like it, didn't leave a review. Is that what happens? I don't know.
it?
But I suppose it's good not to be slammed by somebody, isn't it? That's
Right, absolutely. I think that, like, especially as writers, like, I think that's the hardest thing is taking criticism from like people of, hey, look, like, oh, this book was okay. Um, like it's brutal. But I always encourage people, like, when they're buying books and stuff, is like to make sure like you give it a fair chance. And even if it's not your thing,
yeah,
at least give it a thought and like put your foot in the door. Cause I could say when I was in the writer's circle, I never in a million years there were things where I was like, there's no way I'm gonna like this because I hate this genre. I was like, it's not anything personal towards them. Just not my taste. And I found myself like I'd be staying up till like 3 in the morning. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need the next part. And they're like, I haven't written it. I was like, nope, got to do it. I was like, because I don't even like this genre, but I got to know what happens.
What genre was that, Angel?
I feel really guilty, but so, there's certain sci-fi. I respect sci-fi writers, but there have been some that I have read that are really hard to get into. So I
Yeah.
respect
Is
them
that
a
because
lot.
not enough happening, perhaps?
Sometimes a lot of it is like I love like things where like when they describe it, you can really picture it. Like not too much, not like crazy, but sometimes I find it that like when they're trying to explain a monster that may not be realistic, that sometimes they're missing details where then I'm
Yeah.
like, well, this is great, but like what were you picturing? Because I'm having a hard time. And sometimes like they'll go back and they'll explain it. For me, I tell people I'm like, I love anything with a good story. I absolutely do. It's just I'm a very picky reader.
I think I'm probably similar, really. I think that there's I think I've sort of said on this channel already that sometimes I'll read a popular author's book and I'll be really happy and really enjoy the book, and then I read something else by them and it's sort of very formulaic and it's like, hang on, I've read this already. It's the same
Right.
story, and that's sort of, I don't like that. I like to all my stories to be sort of like new journeys, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe the way to lots of sales is to be more formulaic, but I
I
sort
think
of
that that's one thing that
I just
I
want to
think
tell the
like is
yeah
underrated is I think that not enough people like I got invited kind of like the person who originally sent me the like here's XYZ of like what you got to do to be a writer, because I think like even with writing classes they're like, oh, if you do XYZ and you go through this formula, like everything's gonna be great. I'm like the little odd duck in the corner that's like, I don't want to do those things, I want to do it like my own way.
well,
I
yeah, I agree. I agree. I think there's because there are so many books out there, and
absolutely.
you get the same with films as well. Films are very samey, aren't they? And it's, we want to break free and have a new story. Like, do we need to release another version of Ghostbusters, for example, or and it's all these
Right.
films, they're just re-releasing the same films. It's, come on, where's the new ideas?
Right, and
I think
making
there's,
like the same remake 6 times in a row because
yeah, that's
the
it.
last
Well,
one
I've
didn't
seen,
do well.
I was watching on one of the channels the West Side Story, the new version of West Side Story, and
Yeah.
it's like, I just like the old West Side Story. That's I'm, I'm,
Right.
I couldn't sit through the whole lot, so I'm sort of watching it in chunks, and
Right.
it's okay, but the old one is, I love the old one a
Yeah,
lot.
you just
I
can't
love
beat
it.
you really can't beat a classic sometimes. Like,
You
I
can't
heard
beat the
Beetlejuice
OG, can you?
I heard the Beetlejuice 2 was coming out, and I'm like, "It's been so long, and the
And
first one
that's
was
made,
perfect."
is it my shirt made you think of that?
No, I was just thinking about remakes, and I was just having a conversation with a really good old friend of mine, and we were laughing because I told him I was like, "Oh, Beetlejuice 2 might be like really great." He works for the local news, and he's a film critic. He actually like just went to the Oscars, and we were just talking about that. He's like, I don't have any expectations for Beetlejuice 2, and I was like, it might have some potential somewhere. He's like, we just need something new, and I think that there's so many authors out there, like, and even like indie authors don't get enough credit because there are some amazing indie writers and books, and I feel like if people like Netflix and all that like really took the steps of like letting at least maybe like even a handful, just pick like a
Yeah,
handful and like give it a chance and let people decide if they like it or not, because
yeah.
at least it's new content and not the same 5
The
stories over and over again.
yeah, I think, well, there's, my wife's a big fan of Christmas romances,
Yeah.
and like they're just, they are okay, but they're just so predictable, and it's, oh. And then, and when you can say that about romance movies, and it just needs new people in the space, and there's so much good indie work going on in books. But it's getting that engagement. Have you got an agent for your work or not?
Nope, I do everything on my own. I go ahead and I am headstrong. I'm determined. I'm like, I'm not gonna let anybody tell me. I actually told people, they were asking me, they're like, "Are you gonna go through a publishing company any day?" Like even especially when I first started, they were like, "Are you gonna go through like a publishing company?" But what I realized was, and I don't dog them. I know there are good publishing companies out there. I respect it. But I have seen so many people who got burnt where like it got put on the shelf, but they signed a contract. So then their stuff is like sitting and waiting.
Yeah,
Is that I was like, between that and them telling me to be on good behavior and I can't be on good behavior, between the two, I was like, there's just no way. So I decided that my best way of going about it is just really, I think if you have a dream, that like if you keep pushing and you keep moving forward, and I think the number one thing is putting yourself outside your comfort zone. I originally was very self-conscious about like all of this, and I realized that once I got out of my comfort zone, it was like a whole different ball game.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think I think it's sometimes staying independent um, means nobody's going to distract you from your voice. It's a tough decision, really. I'm sort of in the middle at the minute, so that was sort of my question. Why I asked the question, really.
Yeah,
Um,
it's hard. I had a person I met. I actually met them in person. It was the first person on Twitter I ever met in person. He went through a publishing company, and we were talking about it because he was like, "Well, this publishing company got me like different fairs and different festivals," and he's like, I got all these things in my like my foot in the door. And I was like, okay, you got me on that one. And he's like,
yeah,
but when it comes to the social media stuff, he goes, I'm doomed. He goes, but you're doing really good. I said, so see, like we got, there's different spectrums, and I think it's different for everybody. And I was like, at least like they've got you get your foot in the door in different places. I said that means that you can really put yourself out there. But I think it's all about just doing a lot of research before deciding to really um, like love to be with somebody, because like you got to make sure that they're as interested and passionate as in your work as you are,
yeah.
you know.
Well, I had an interesting conversation recently. A publishing company were interested in my work. I'd put a children's story to them. But when they sent me a contract, they wanted me to pay for all the publishing.
Oh shoot.
That's not the way it works.
Yeah, right. Like you shouldn't be having to pay somebody to like. It should be the other way around. Like you should be
Yeah.
getting paid for the stuff that you're publishing.
Oh, and
I think that that's part of why I respect Amazon so much for giving the ability to publish on your own a lot
yeah.
easier, because I think that there's a lot of people who deserve to have their work out there, but wouldn't necessarily make it through the like tape and all that stuff through other companies.
Just very briefly. What's your process? Your first draft? How long will that normally take?
So it depends. So I this is a fun thing. I have bipolar. So sometimes when I'm in a mood, I'll be like in a great happy mood and I'll be writing, and then I'll hit a wall and I'll be like, oh, I'm not in a good mood today. So I'm kind of like bummed out. So I'll switch projects to something a little more darker. So it takes a couple months.
Oh, I like that. So when you're in a dark mood, you'll do dark writing effectively.
Yeah.
I'll have my
Yeah,
happy
because
project. I'll have my happy project here and my dark project here.
absolutely. And a lot of times when people have heard my writing, they tell me that a lot. They're like, I can really feel the emotions in this. I'm like, good, because I could too.
It's just
Because
how often are you on the level? Sorry.
like honestly, most of the time, like it's one of those things where like when I'm in a really happy mood, I've learned through a lot of, I did cognitive behavioral therapy for like at least 6 7 years. Best therapist I ever had, because he's like, you got a lot of personality. He's like, let's figure out what we can do with it. And the best advice he ever gave me was like when I'm like up and moving, and like I am very super hyper and happy and everything's rainbows and unicorns. I'll be out like getting experiences and stuff, and I'll be doing all these things. I'm like, oh my god, this would be great for a story, and we'll have happy stories and all that. And then when I'd had my downs, I realized I could really sit down and concentrate. So even though like it shifts like every once in a while, a lot of times I'm in the middle is just kind of like small events that kind of help
Yeah.
pick it up or bring it back down. So I love being able to use that in my writing, and I love being able to use experiences that I've been through to kind of help tweak my writing to really bring it more
And
to life.
experiences you've been through, the
Yeah,
there's a lot there, isn't there?
yeah, yeah. I
We,
think
we
like
discussed we discussed before going on air a lot of challenges that you've had recently. But the just tell us again the story of how you got how you upped sticks. Go on, let that come from your words rather than me. Just tell me that first bit again.
yeah, I met my husband on online, and we well, at the time we had only met for like 3 months. We're great. And I don't know, there was just something that kept saying like, just let's hop on a plane. And he was like, why don't you come to move to Indiana? Like we're a whole like, we drink, we party, we have fun. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I packed all my stuff. I just bought a plane ticket one day, hopped on the plane, got like, this old man was sitting next to me. It was so funny. I felt so bad for him. I had like a shirt and like jeans and stuff. And and I'm like taking them off because I had a dress underneath that I just wanted to like wear to surprise him. And the old man goes, "You are not from around here, are you?" He's like, "You've never been out to Indiana." I said, "No, it'll be great." I said, "It'll be wonderful." He goes, "Have you ever been out in the country?" I said, "Nope, this will be my first experience." The guy was laughing so hard. He goes, "First off, I'm glad that I have grandchildren." He goes, "Because the fact that you're changing on the plane while we're here." But he was like, "I'm going to give you a couple tips." He goes, "Look, there's the city." I said, "No, that's not a city." I said, "That's a bunch of dirt." He goes, "Nope, nope, that's the city." I was freaking out. I was like, I didn't know what to expect. But when I got down off the thing, I met him, and he went and he got down on one knee. He goes, "Will you marry me?" I was like, "Yeah, but I gotta go get my luggage first." So I laugh about the Frozen story when she like I don't know if you saw Frozen, but where
Yeah, I'm saying
he
yeah.
goes, "Oh, will you? I got this crazy thing. Will you marry me?" And she goes, "Oh my god, yes." I'm like, "Hey, that's my story. You don't know." I was like, "I know how this ends." I think one of the craziest stories, if you don't mind me sharing, like one of the ones that the writer circle was like flipping out about, I had met, and this was one of those stories where like looking back on it, I understand. Even my therapist laughed at me, and I yelled at him. I said, "You're not allowed to laugh at your patients." I met a guy who was a trucker online, right? And he seemed really nice. We had music in common. We had everything in common. There was a small um problem. There was one deal breaker, right? So I'm like, "Oh, you're really sweet. Let's be friends. Like we can be friends. We'll talk. We'll have a great time. Like just romantically, like this is a deal breaker, whatever." So he goes, "No, I can't do that. You broke my heart." Roar. I'm like, "Okay, I'll give you a couple months to have relaxation," right? So we go to dinner, and he's like, "Hey, do you know what like town this is in?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "Do you know what like street that is?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "How the heck do you drive?" I said, "It's the Walmart next to the McDonald's." I was like, "Location, location, location. Everything's next to something." And he goes, "What are you gonna do when there's not any like landmarks?" I said, "Well, I guess I'd be doomed, dude. I don't know." Like, I'd be like, "Hi, I'm out in the middle of nowhere. Come save me." And so we're laughing and joking, and we he's like, "Oh, I forgot my phone in my semi." He goes, "So why don't you follow me? We'll go get it. We'll go back to my place." I'm like, "Yeah, great." And so he goes and looks at my tire. He goes, "Oh, you got a scratch on your tire?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "That's really dangerous. Why don't we take my car?" I said, "Okay, great. I'll take your car, no problems." Didn't think about like, once you get in the car, you're kind of reliant on that person for transportation. So we got to an abandoned gas station out in the middle of BFE, Kentucky. And we're like, I was like, "Oh," and he's like, "Here's my semi." I'm like, "Great." Like now I understood the whole concept. Let's look back at all the foreshadowing here. nothing bad happened. He got really like we got into the semi. And he starts reading my text messages back to me of me breaking up with him. And I was like, I've seen enough Dateline and enough just like 60 Minutes to understand I'm in deep shit. Like even the camera that like checks everything's covered up. So I'm like, okay, gotta think quick. Thank God I had an interview for a podcast and my phone was blowing up. And he's like, what is going on with your phone? I said, I forgot to tell you. Like I do social media as like a second career kind of thing. And he goes, are you serious? I said, yeah, I told everybody about how like I'm meeting up with you and how cute you are. I might have told him your name and where we're meeting up. And his jaw dropped on the floor. He goes, I'm going to take you back to your car now.
That's it. Probably best not to kill you now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, I think that's a great idea. He brought me back to the car. And he goes, you forgot something. And all I kept thinking is, if I forgot something at the semi, dude, no offense, but I'm calling it lost. Calling it lost, calling it a day. I can replace whatever, but I can't replace my body. He goes, you forgot your
Angel, we've got to read that. That's good.
Yeah, he was like, hey, Angel, you forgot your he's like, you forgot your hug. And I sat there for a minute. I contemplated for a long time. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna. I gave him a hug. I couldn't be rude. So I gave him a hug and told him goodbye. And I was like, I'm gonna block the number. Got home at 3 a.m. It was the latest I had ever stayed out in my life. Got home at 3 a.m.
Angel, this has been fantastic chat. Fantastic chat. I
Yeah,
say I appreciate you coming on the channel. I know you've got some challenges at the moment, so good luck
yeah,
with those. And we'll keep an
absolutely.
eye on Twitter, and your link will be in the description. So if people join the journey and
Heck
see what AK Wilson is up to next, that's
yeah.
brilliant. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening. Cheers.
Thanks.
Bye bye.